Good morning, everybody. Thank you so very much for joining us this morning for our June webinar. This is Stephanie Ryan. I am the Marketing Director here at RapidScale. And normally we have Mark Zakowski, our President of Sales, but he is on the road today, so I am stepping in his place to moderate for our presentation this morning. We have a guest speaker with us today. We have Nathan Anderson, who is our representative from Vision Solutions, who does our double take solution for our disaster recovery. So we're going to be talking a little bit about DR today. He is a fantastic resource for you guys. We've worked with him for quite some time now. So in just a second here, I'm going to hand it over to him, and he's going to kind of run you through how everything works, and we are going to go through a demo today as well. Just a couple of housekeeping things. The presentation is being recorded. It will be posted on the partner portal today. I also will be sending out a follow-up email by this afternoon with a copy of the presentation as well as the link to the recording. So if you have to leave early or anything like that, you can always jump back into the partner portal and watch the recording. Now, if you have any questions along the way, over in the GoToWebinar panel, there's a box that says questions. Feel free to type anything in there, and I will be fielding questions as we go. And I will also be feeding them to Nathan if we need to address anything live here too. We will also be doing a Q&A section at the end, so if you would like to have something addressed at the end of the session today too, feel free to just let me know, and we can bring that up then too. So with that being said, I am going to go ahead and hand it over to Nathan. Nathan, it is all yours.
Thanks, Stephanie, and thanks everyone for joining today. As Stephanie said, we're going to take a look at our joint solution using the RapidScale Cloud and our double take set of solutions. But at the very core of our double take solution set is our software-based real-time replication. And the fact that we are a software-based solution means that we don't care what the underlying architecture is. We can deploy our real-time replication onto any physical machine, any virtual machine that runs in any hypervisor, as well as any cloud instance, including RapidScale. So a very flexible solution that fits on any Windows or Linux architecture. And wrapped around that real-time replication, we have three core competencies: disaster recovery, high availability, and then online real-time migration. And we'll definitely dive into the specifics of those in a little bit. In terms of the supported operating systems, on the Windows side of the house, we have support all the way up to Windows 2012 R2 and all the way back to Windows 2003. For Linux distributions, we support Red Hat and its derivatives, so CentOS and Oracle Enterprise, as well as SLES and Ubuntu. So a very, very large net that we can cast to protect any architecture of machine with one solution set for disaster recovery, high availability, and then that online real-time migration. So in terms of the specifics of that real-time replication, again, it is software-based, so we can load it anywhere. It's real-time and it's asynchronous, so geographic distance doesn't matter to us. If we need to send these workloads halfway around the world, double take can get the job done there. It's a byte-level replication engine, so it's very, very efficient across the wire. We know bandwidth is a very expensive commodity, so we're trying to be as efficient as possible while we replicate. With us being real-time, our recovery point objective is going to be very, very low. You know, quite literally, as soon as your users write an operation, we see that I/O come through the stack and replicate it to the target. In terms of recovery time objective, with our HA and our online real-time migration solution, we're looking at recovery time objectives in the magnitude of minutes. So when that disaster strikes and those machines to come up in the RapidScale Cloud, it's only going to take a couple of minutes. The same is true for migrating or onboarding those physical, virtual, or alternate cloud instances directly into RapidScale. You're only going to see a handful of minutes of downtime throughout that entire migration cycle. So very, very smooth in terms of onboarding those workloads into the cloud. So we're a byte-level engine right out of the box, but we've also optimized our replication engine with compression as well as bandwidth throttling. So we can effectively tell double take exactly how much bandwidth that it's allowed to use. And then lastly, we can encrypt that traffic using AES 256-bit encryption. So even if you're protecting or migrating over open internet links, you can have the peace of mind that it's being done very, very securely. So the next couple of slides, we'll walk through the actual process of replication. So you can see I've got that production source machine on the left-hand side, and I've got my target instance that's running in the RapidScale cloud. I've deployed DoubleTake onto both of these machines. In terms of that installation, it's very low level. It does not require a reboot, and we can even push that installer from our DoubleTake management console. So we really don't have to touch these machines if we don't want to. But when we start the process of protection or migration, two things happen. The first is what we call our mirror process, and that is really the initial synchronization or verification of that initial subset of data. And by default, we do a difference mirror here. So if we're working with, extremely large workloads in terms of terabytes of data, etc., you could take a traditional copy locally and ship it out to RapidScale. They would then paste it into that instance, and when we start this process for migrating you or protecting you into the cloud, we see that data that's already resident and only send the deltas between the two. So a fantastic way to get that initial seeding done with minimal data flowing across the wire. Simultaneously with that mirror process, our real-time replication starts. So as your users are creating I/O from their various applications, we see it on its way down to be committed to the hard disk. When that op is committed to the disk, an acknowledgement gets passed back up the stack to whatever wrote it to let it know that that write was successful. We see that acknowledgement, and at that point, replicate the data to the target and apply it. We're doing this with our patented real-time technology, so we're maintaining the write order consistency of that data. So we're effectively sending all of these operations sequentially to the target and writing them in the exact same way they were written on the source. This guarantees crash consistency for all of your complex data structures. So your SQL, Oracle, Exchange, they're all going to be in a good crash consistent state when we need them when we're protecting for DR or HA. Our patented real-time process just takes care of that right out of the box. No extra hoops to jump through in terms of offlining your source workloads to make sure that data's in a good state. DoubleTake just does it right out of the box. So Stephanie, this might be a good time to pause to see if there are any questions.
So far, I don't have anything to have you go through for everybody, but just a reminder, if you do have questions throughout the presentation, you can go ahead and type it into that chat box on the side. So I'll let you keep going.
All right, thanks, Stephanie. So in terms of the core solutions, for DoubleTake, for high availability solutions, we use what we call DoubleTake availability. It uses that real-time replication to keep that recovery point extremely low. And the recovery time objective is, again, just going to be in the magnitude of minutes. But with this solution, we give you granularity as well. So we can protect just at the data-only level. So if you just needed to protect specific files and folders, DoubleTake availability can do that. Moving up the stack, we protect also at the application layer. We generally deploy this style of solution on your source-side Microsoft clusters because of that extra clustering component. And then we have two methods of entire server protection. For the RapidScale Cloud, we utilize our full server technology. So this is a one-to-one topology, utilizing our real-time replication, but protecting everything from that source machine. So the operating system, all of the applications, as well as all of the data, barring any exclusions. Okay? Our real-time replication is then processing all of those changes from the source machine and replicating them directly to an instance that's resident in the RapidScale cloud. At the point of disaster, someone would, click our failover button, and at that point, our system state process runs. So this is the process that effectively matches up all of the architecture dependencies, right? So all of the device drivers from the source are kind of stripped out, and we retain all of that good information that we know from that instance running in RapidScale. The server then reboots and comes up literally as your source machine. Host name, all the apps, all the data as well. The only thing that would be different is we would retain that target instance's IP address. So your source machine comes up with that good cloud IP address so that people can immediately start connecting to it after that couple of minutes of downtime through that process. And then lastly, we have our VRA style protection. We utilize this methodology in the private cloud. So when we do have access to that target hypervisor, we can provide all of the orchestration there. So in terms of creating those new virtual machines, we're going to provide that for you. But regardless of how you choose to protect, we're looking at very, very low recovery points and very low recovery time objectives with the HA solution. So next we'll kind of change gears and talk about our DR edition. So with the DR edition, again, we are protecting, utilizing that real-time replication, so very, very low recovery point. With this style of protection, this is a true many-to-one option. So you could be protecting, 10 or 15 of your source physical, virtual, or cloud instances directly to one target instance that's running in RapidScale Cloud. So very beneficial in terms of resource utilization there inside the cloud. But the big difference between the DR and the HA is with the DR process, the recovery happens at the point of disaster. So you would declare that disaster, you would then log into that target instance in RapidScale and create a recovery job. That recovery job would then replicate the data, could be file level data or the entirety of a machine, to what we call a recovery target. So that recovery target could be a new instance that's spun up in the RapidScale cloud, or it can even be recovered back down on-prem if you need it to. But since we have to push that data from the target instance in RapidScale to that recovery target, that extends the recovery time. So based upon the amount of data in which you're recovering versus the available bandwidth in between, right, if you're recovering locally inside the cloud or back down on-prem, that could extend the recovery time to what could be hours depending upon those variables. But it's nice to have the option. So generally we see the HA deployed on your mission critical boxes, right? Those tier 0, tier 1 boxes that need to be up all of the time, they're being protected with the HA solution. And your tier 3, tier 4 machines that can stand a couple of hours of outage are being protected with the DR edition. The nice part is that everything is managed through the same interface. So, you've got a one-stop shop effectively to recover or fail over in the HA scenario all of the machines that were affected by that disaster. So Stephanie, I'll pause here again. Are there any questions about the differences between the HA and the DR solution? One other point of note, even if you are protecting an entire machine with the DR edition, you can still do file level recovery. So if I needed to recover a file that Stephanie accidentally deleted a couple of weeks ago, the DR edition is going to give me that capability as well.
Okay, Nathan, so I do have a couple of questions for you that have popped up now.
Okay.
The first is, I understand DoubleTake can support physical servers. Does it also support VMware? So let's start with that.
Absolutely. So in terms of whatever server, be it source or target, we are going to support any Windows or Linux. So they can be virtual machines running in VMware, Xen, Hyper-V. It doesn't matter with DoubleTake. The same is true, if you wanted to protect or migrate from, an Azure instance into RapidScale, DoubleTake can accommodate that as well. So very versatile in terms of where we deploy, but to answer that direct question, yes, we support all of your VMware virtual machines as well.
Okay, next up is a little bit of a competitor comparison.
Okay.
So we've got two here. How does DoubleTake compare to both Zerto and Veeam?
Okay, great. Good questions, guys. And they are definitely direct competitors with us. The first would be our flexibility, right? With both of those competitive solutions, you're looking at being boxed in to two hypervisors, either ESX or Hyper-V, whereas DoubleTake works on your entire environment, right? All of your physicals, any of the virtuals that you have, and any other cloud instances that you might be running. So that would be the biggest key right there, is that we're going to work with the entirety of your environment, whereas those guys are going to be boxed in, and you're going to have to find another solution for everything else that does not fit inside that box. Secondarily, one of those competitors uses a snapshot-based technology, so their recovery point objective is always going to be a lot higher than ours because they are, working on that schedule that at best I think it's every 15 minutes or so, whereas DoubleTake is a true real-time solution. As things are being written, we are replicating them across the wire. This is good for two things. Number one, bandwidth consumption. With DoubleTake utilizing that replication, we're kind of like a steady stream coming out of your faucet, right? We're just seeing the writes as they come and sending them across the wire. Whereas snapshot-based solutions are effectively collecting those same changes that DoubleTake has already replicated across, and they're sending that bubble across the wire based upon your scheduled interval. Those bubbles in limited bandwidth environments can cause some problems there. So that would be another big difference. DoubleTake is very, very efficient with our replication technology.
Okay, one more for you. Can you back up to a primary data center and then replicate to a secondary data center?
Absolutely. So in terms of our connections, and we'll dive definitely deeper into that when we get into my lab, but we can really send these things anywhere. So, let's say I have one source machine and I want to protect it to 2 alternate locations. You can certainly accommodate that, but we'll definitely touch on that a little bit more when we get into the lab.
Okay, awesome. That's it for now.
All right, awesome. Good questions, guys. Thanks for those. So lastly, we have our online real-time migration technology. We call this DoubleTake Move. This very much simplifies and streamlines any migration. So not only can we migrate into the cloud, but we can migrate onto physical machines, any virtual, any cloud instance, right? But effectively, this technology is the exact same as our HA solution. The only difference is we give you 60 days to utilize the real-time replication for that specific migration. Once the migration is complete or those 60 days are up, that code is no longer usable. So they're kind of like one-time consume licenses just for the purposes of migration. But with this, we give you granularity as well, so you can migrate just data. If you had an alternate SAN solution that you needed to migrate all of the data from, say, an EMC over to a new HP, utilize DoubleTake Move to perform that to minimize the downtime. And we have the 2 methods of entire server migration. So when we are migrating onto a physical platform or a cloud instance that has no underlying hypervisor access, we utilize that one-to-one relationship and that real-time replication to minimize the downtime. So effectively, install DoubleTake, configure a job. At that point, you walk away. Everyone is still working on those production machines. DoubleTake is seeing the changes and replicating them to the target for the purposes of that migration. From day 1 until day 60, whenever you're ready to finalize the process, log into the DoubleTake console, click the cutover button. At that point, if the source machine is still online, we're going to shut it down gracefully for you. Then we're going to fail over and bring that machine up in the RapidScale cloud. And effectively, the downtime there is going to be the magnitude of minutes. In terms of risk mitigation, if there were something troubling in the new environment, simply shut down the new one and boot back up the original source machine and you're back to square one. So built-in risk mitigation as well, but very nice in terms of migrations. Coming up as an engineer, I know I've spent countless nights and weekends watching thermometers cross the screen for the purposes of migrating, and this effectively saves that. But very effective tool when we're migrating anywhere. So as I transition into the lab, we'll open it up for a couple of more questions, if there are any at this point.
So I don't have anything for you at the moment, Nathan.
Okay, cool. Can you see the console there okay, Stephanie?
Sure can.
Perfect. So this is our DoubleTake console. This is what we manage everything DoubleTake. DR, HA, as well as those migrations, they're all managed through this console. This is a standalone console that's free. So by default, it's going to be loaded on the source and the target, but you could certainly load it onto your management station, your laptop, etc., anywhere you wanted to manage DoubleTake. But by default, it's going to be in the cloud as well as on your source machine. A little bit about my test environment here. I have a mixed bag of virtual machines that are running in Hyper-V as well as in VMware to kind of show the fact that the underlying technology that is DoubleTake doesn't matter what we're working with. As long as it's Windows or Linux, the process is going to be the same. So the first step in the process is to actually add some servers into my console so that so that I can manage them. So go ahead and pop over there real fast, and you can see I've loaded DoubleTake onto a myriad of machines in my environment and already added them. But in order to bring on a new one, simply load it in either by host name or IP address, pass it some credentials, click OK, and that guy's going to land in my console. So if this were a brand new machine, I could simply right-click on this guy and push the install to him. We do push that installer through WMI, so that's going to have to be opened up on the network. But even if you have to run the installer manually, it's a pretty standard Windows installation. This is also a multi-select console. So if I did bring on, four new machines, I could very easily push the install out to all of them simultaneously. So nice way to get the installer in place. But the last feature within this screen is really the logical hierarchy. So if you did have multiple sites that you were protecting, multiple application groupings, etc., you could create a logical hierarchy, throw the respective machines in that group, and you could then manage on that group. So if you did have that entire site go down, with one click of the button effectively, you could fail all those machines over into the cloud. Okay? So we'll get into the guts of DoubleTake and take a look at the actual job. So you can see right off the bat, we've got our DoubleTake availability, that HA solution, our DoubleTake DR edition, and our online real-time migration. So in this example, for DoubleTake HA and the move, the technology is the same. We talked about the only difference really being the licensing expiring with DoubleTake Move. So my lab is actually licensed with availability. So we'll quickly walk through a DoubleTake availability or migration job creation. So the first step, what do we want to protect or migrate? So folders and application, or in our case, we're going to work with an entire Windows server. The workflow for Linux would look exactly the same, and it's done through the same console as well. You can, however, create those Linux jobs via our command line. So if you did not have a Windows machine, you'd still be able to manage your Linux environments. The next step is selecting that source server. So the data that I want to protect, my production server. And I'm just going to go ahead with my cleverly named FFO source machine here. And you can see those three core workloads, just the data only, the full server, so OS, apps, and data in a one-to-one capacity. And then when we do have that hypervisor access in the private cloud, the entire server migrating or protecting into Hyper-V or ESX. But we're going to go ahead and work with our one-to-one relationship here. Now, even though I am protecting the entirety of a server, you can see you can deselect these volumes as needed, but by default, we're going to see all of them and select them. But since we are a software-based engine, we can provide very specific exclusions on the data that I want to protect or migrate. So if there were files and folders that I know weren't critical to a disaster and we wanted to exclude them, we could simply add the rules to do that. We also support wildcards with our exclusion. So in terms of migration, it can add a lot of value. We can strip out old data based upon those file types if we need to. But great to be able to cut the fat and only protect or migrate the data that we want to. Go ahead and proceed here. The next step is choosing that target. Again, this would be the instance that's riding in the RapidScale cloud. In terms of connectivity between the source and the target, we don't require a VPN, so NAT is fully supported. So just wanted to throw that one out as well. So next we'll get into our job options. And you can see the General tab, that's just kind of the name that we're going to reflect inside the console, but you can certainly call that whatever you like. In HA scenario, we are also going to create a failover monitor on that instance running in the RapidScale cloud that's effectively always looking at that production server to make sure that it's serving up data the way that it should. And after 5 minutes of that target not being able to communicate with the source, that would equal what we call a failover condition. So at that point, all the red lights are going to go off, and we're going to alert everyone that there is a potential problem. But you can also see that wait for a user to initiate the failover is selected by default. This means that someone has to click the button to initiate that failover sequence. If I were to deselect this option, then as soon as this threshold was met, it would just automatically go ahead and fail over into the RapidScale cloud. Okay, but by default, we like the option of clicking the button there. In terms of the identity, really the IP addressing of that target, I told you a little bit about how it works, and you can see here we've got two methods for the networking. So when we are migrating or protecting to a local subnet, we would just retain that source's IP address at the time of failover. But when we are protecting or migrating into a new subnet, i.e. when we're protecting into the RapidScale cloud, it's likely that you're going to have a different network there. So what happens is when the failover process completes, your source machine will be live inside the cloud, and it will retain a good cloud IP address so that everyone can then connect. Okay. For the purposes of HA solution, we have what we call reverse protection. So what this effectively allows you to do is reverse the process. So after that disaster has been cleaned up, your on-prem site is back to the way it should be, we would then reverse the process, start replicating from the cloud back down to the ground. Once that synchronization was complete, we would then initiate another failover process to get you back down to where you started. In terms of the network adapters, we're going to see all of the adapters that are associated with that source machine and allow you to map them to their appropriate NIC in the cloud. So again, looking for seamless connectivity even when that disaster happens. The mirror process we talked about in the presentation. It's really that initial push of data into the cloud. And you can see by default we are doing a difference mirror there. So again, pre-stage that data, take a copy, snail mail it out to RapidScale. Then when we start, we're going to see everything that's already there and only send the differences between the two. In terms of the staging folder option, in this type of workflow, that target instance is a running version of Windows in the cloud. So I can't replicate the production operating system to its final destination because of all of those working files. So what we do is for the Windows program files and any user profiles, we're staging those on the target. So that's part of that system state process that kind of merges the source and the target to finalize the entire process. With the HA solution, we also have the ability to take snapshots on the target data so that we would have that point-in-time recoverability if we needed to. And then lastly, our networking components. Talked a bit about the compression. I've seen it get 8-to-1 times compression on its medium setting, but that's really going to be dependent upon the types of data that we work with, right? Some applications write data more efficiently than others. But a great way to help get across the wire for that migration or that HA. And then lastly, the throttling built into double take. So this effectively allows us to QoS double take and tell it exactly how much bandwidth it's allowed to use. And you can even schedule those throttles. So a lot of people choose to squeeze down DoubleTake through their core working hours and then open it up after working hours have completed in those environments where bandwidth is at a commodity. And then lastly, at the point of failover, we also have the ability to launch scripts for you. You know, if there's anything outside of the scope of DoubleTake, other applications that need to be massaged, etc., we can launch any scripts that we might need to help automate that as well. So Stephanie, did we get any questions about the actual setup of our HA or migration job here?
Nothing specifically about setup. I do have a couple of questions in the backlog if you want to jump backwards a little bit. Otherwise, we can come back to them later. So you tell me.
We'll just go ahead and press on with the demo, finish that out, and then we'll clean up those other items at the end.
Perfect.
All right, cool. All right, the last step in the process here is what we call validation. So based upon the source, the target environment, all of the options that were chosen throughout DoubleTake, we're going to make sure that this job is going to work. If we did see any red error messages, we would not present the finish button. So we're not going to allow someone to create a job that we know out of the box is not going to work. Okay? So we'll go ahead and finalize that. So that is an example of that HA or migration job. So at this point, we step away. You know, these jobs are persistent. They are going to be replicating from now until you have that disaster or until you tell DoubleTake not to replicate anymore. Okay? So it really is kind of a set it and forget it type of scenario here. You can see here I already went ahead and created a DR job, but we'll go ahead and create another one so everybody can see the difference between the setups there. So I'll select the DR edition in this case. And you can see, do I want to protect or do I want to recover data? At this point, we're just going to protect another source machine. And keep in mind, this is a many-to-one type of solution. Again, we give you the granularity of just data or the entirety of the machine. Go ahead. That target that resides in RapidScale, we call that a repository server. So this is going to be the target for all of the machines that are replicating into the RapidScale cloud. This machine doesn't require a whole lot of resources. It just needs the disk space to accommodate all of the various source machines that are replicating into it. In terms of the footprint of that data, with DoubleTake being a byte-level engine, we are going to be a true one-to-one in terms of how much source data that you have and how much target data is resident out there in the cloud. Now, with that said, we also have the ability to take snapshots of that target data that would be resident on that repository as well. But in terms of the data that DoubleTake is replicating from the source to the target, it's going to be exactly the same. But snapshots are great. In terms of the way that we write that data on the target, effectively we're going to create a logical hierarchy here, server images, and then a folder for each respective source. And underneath that, we are going to create a virtual disk container for each one of the logical volumes associated with that source machine. This gives us two advantages. Number one, it's very clean on the repository server. You know, there's not millions and millions of files and folders just hanging out there because they're all inside those virtual disk containers. But it also allows us to perform very granular snapshotting on each of the respective source machines that are being protected to this repository server. So nice and clean and gives us very granular snapshotting abilities. In terms of the core networking components, you know, I think we covered those, so I'm just going to go ahead and finalize this job. And you can see once again the validation component just to make sure that everything is going to work. So the next step in the process would be, what do we do at the point of disaster? So as we talked about before, our HA and our migration, all we really have to do is click our failover or cutover button. And this is going to effectively run that system state process, reboot that target, and bring it up in the new arena. Okay, that process takes about 5 minutes. We also have the ability to test, and you can see that DoubleTake is intelligent enough to know that my data is not fully synchronized. So it's warning me about that. So I'm just going to go ahead and cancel that. And the alternate would be our DR. So with the DR, again, the recovery happens after the disaster. So I declare the disaster, and now I need to create a recovery job at this point. So we'll go ahead and step through that. First step is, where's my data? So it's in the repository server out in the cloud. And we would see all of the images for all the source machines associated with that repository server here. You can see my good one is source 1, and my secondary is still running through its synchronization. Then we have the option for live data or recovering to a snapshot. So those would be listed there if I did have any. So we're going to go ahead and recover to live data. Bear with me here, folks. I share my lab with about 30 of my contemporaries around the world. And you never know how those guys are going to put their toys away sometimes. So we'll give it a couple of clicks here while it thinks about it. But in the time that we've spent creating this recovery job, our HA would be already up and running in the cloud. So that is definitely the big difference between the two there. Hey, Stephanie, now while this guy is thinking, that might be a good time for those questions that we missed.
Sure. Okay, so let's start with this one. This is from a little ways back. Would the async drift from one site to another possibly require a lower bandwidth circuit than either a batching system or a system that does a nightly backup, thus saving money?
Well, one of the nice things about DoubleTake is that we are very flexible. You know, our replication will literally work over any IP-based network. I'll give you an example of the worst network that I've ever seen DoubleTake replicate across. Our U.S. Army utilized DoubleTake in remote deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan to effectively replicate data from the field back to the home base. And they did this over microwave transmission links that had 2,000 milliseconds of latency. So very, very slow network, but DoubleTake was still able to accomplish their goals. Now, you know, you bring up a great point, and that is, you know, there are unknown variables with DR, HA, and migration. And the biggest one is, how much data are we really migrating or protecting for DR? And built into DoubleTake, since we are that byte-level engine, we're seeing your data at a very intimate way, and we're tracking all of those statistics. So you can look at those stats and say, hey, I have X amount of data. In order to meet my SLA, I'm going to need this much bandwidth. So the tools are definitely built in to help you size the solution and have intelligent conversations with, you know, your customers or your managers about how much we really need in order to meet the goals that they've set out.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about how DoubleTake is licensed. A couple points
Sure.
Specifically, capacity, locations. There's also another question here that talks about the DoubleTake Move licensing, if you can extend it for a larger migration. So let's talk a little bit about that.
No problem. So in terms of our licensing, when we're working through RapidScale, RapidScale utilizes what we call our DoubleTake metered usage model. Effectively, that is DoubleTake's consumption-based model. Effectively, the way that that works is for each connection, we automatically bill based upon the number of those connections that are coming through. So if you were protecting 10 machines into the RapidScale cloud, they would see all 10 of those connections coming in and bill you automatically based upon that consumption. It is monthly based, and there's no minimum requirements there from DoubleTake. So we can be very, very flexible with the DR and the HA. With Double Take Move, we can also be flexible. You know, by default, out of the box, that is a 60-day code. But if you know going in that you're going to need, you know, 90 or 120, something like that, we can also create custom codes to meet those needs. So again, we can be pretty flexible with all of the licensing.
Okay. Let's see here. How about how Double Take compares to Datto?
Datto, you know, I'm not real familiar with them, but I would assume that the same things apply. And Stephanie, if you want to jot down that specific person's information, I can go dig it up. I know that we definitely have it in the database. I just don't encounter it very often. But you know, again, the two major sellers of Double Take is real-time replication, so very, very low recovery point objective. And the biggest one is the flexibility to work on any architecture, right? Any Windows, any Linux server with minimal downtime through any migration or protection.
Okay. All right. I think we're good to go.
All right, cool. And our little Q&A allowed us to enumerate that data. So you can see here I'm choosing what I want to recover. So I can just do data, or I could recover that entire machine if it were a site-level disaster. But I'm just going to run through and recover a specific folder here. Again, cleverly called recovery. So we'll add that rule. And we'll go ahead and click next. This next step is choosing that recovery target. And we give you, flexibility with these recoveries. You can recover into the cloud, or you could even recover back down onto the ground. Effectively, you can send that data to anything that has a Double Take DR license. If you were spinning up a new instance, I believe that RapidScale has templates that already have your licenses. So you would effectively just spin one up and point to that. I am just going to recover this data to the repository server itself. So that is always an option as well. And you can see all of our core Double Take replication options and where you want that data to land on the recovery target. So I'm just going to send this guy to the D drive. And quick validation, and we're now recovering that data. So again, the big difference between DR and HA, number one, recovery time objective. The HA solution, you're going to be back in business in just a couple of minutes. And the DR edition, you're going to have extended recovery time based upon how much data you are recovering. The other benefit you get from the DR edition is that granular file level recovery that we just ran through. But definitely nice to have the choice between the two, depending upon the actual needs of that respective workload. So Stephanie, that was really all I had to show the guys in the lab, unless there is anything that anyone else would like to see. We can open it up for that last bit of QA.
Sure. So let's give it a second. I didn't have any new questions come in here, so give everyone just a minute. Again, if you guys have any questions, there's a little questions box on the GoToWebinar panel. You can go ahead and type in your questions there, and we will get some answers for you. So we'll give it a second, Nathan.
Okay, no problem.
Okay. Here's one. How long is a typical setup time?
That was it. Effectively, the job creation that we just ran through, that's going to be normal for anyone using Double Take. In terms of the installation, that's just a standard kind of Windows package. A lot of next, and then OK. So fairly straightforward in terms of the setup. But what we just saw is a good typical example. So you're maybe looking at 10, 15 minutes. If you are brand new and running through each of the options with a fine-tooth comb.
Okay. How about, is there any limitation that prevents double take from addressing a large enterprise account?
Not at all. We have, anything from SMBs that use double take to, Fortune 20 companies that use double take for their migrations, HA and DR. So very, very scalable solution. One thing I will note, everything that we've just seen driven through my double take console, we also have ported into PowerShell and REST API. And we're actually in the process of working with RapidScale to integrate these solutions more deeply into their respective portal. But I bring that up in terms of scalability. It's very useful to have those tools to automate, say, a 50,000 server migration, something like that. Wouldn't want to have to build a job for each one of those guys. So definitely have the tool set on the truck to help automate even the largest of protection or migration jobs.
Perfect. Okay. I think that is all that I've got for you. So with that, anything else that you would like to add, Nathan? Otherwise, I'll wrap it up.
No, I appreciate your guys' time. Hope everybody had a good holiday weekend, and we're back at it. But as Stephanie said, as you guys are looking at the solution, etc., we are always here to help. So if any questions come up, feel free to let us know. But thank you for your time.
Okay. Thanks, Nathan, and thank you all for joining us again today. Just a reminder, I did record the session, so you guys will get a link to it later this afternoon. I'll send everyone an email as well as with a copy of the presentation and Nathan's information. If you guys have any questions in the meantime, you can reach out to me. I'm just marketing at rapidscale.net. Otherwise, as always, if you have any questions or anything like that, don't hesitate to let us know. And with that, have a great rest of your day, and we will see you guys next month. Bye.